Hey y'all, howdy. Welcome to One for the Books. I'm Sandy Broadwell, and today we're going to rank all of the books that I read this fall. So it is obviously December now. So we're gonna be talking about the 17 books that I read in September, October, and November. I'm using the same tiers that I used in my summer tier ranking video. And so at the top we have favorites. Underneath that, fun. These books were a really good time. And then underneath fun, we have forgettable. These books might have been enjoyable in the moment, but I don't think they're going to stick with me at all, and I'm not going to think about them again after having set them down, or potentially they were just kind of meh. And then finally at the bottom, we have flops. And these are books that just did not work for me, and I didn't have a great time reading them. So that doesn't necessarily mean they're terrible, it just means they didn't work for me. So without further ado, let me hit screen record. First up on the list is Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. Rebecca is a classic gothic horror, which I read in my Gothic Horror Classics reading vlog this year, which was really fun. And it was definitely, for me, the highlight of that vlog. I loved Rebecca. I expected to read it and just think it was okay, but I actually really enjoyed it. I think I gave it 4.5 stars. It is definitely a new favorite in terms of when I'm thinking about moody gothic books to recommend. The atmosphere in that book is just so lush. So even though it might not be an all-time favorite, it is definitely in my favorites of the year so far. Then we have The Will of the Many by James Islington. This book is so much fun. It is the story of Viz, who is the prince of a kingdom that gets taken over by the evil empire called the Hierarchy, and he spends the rest of his childhood in hiding in an orphanage until he is adopted by a senator who wants to send him to this magical academy to infiltrate basically the academy structure and find out what secret things they have going on there that the government and military don't know about. But his adopted father doesn't know his true identity, and at the same time there is a group of rebels who are trying to rise up against the hierarchy, and they also recruit Viz to work for them. And so nobody really knows Viz's true identity except himself, and he has all of these different pulls on his time and his attention and what he needs to do in order to keep himself safe. And there's also warring factions at play within the government. It's a super interesting book, and its ending is such a cliffhanger. It left my jaw on the floor. I would say I was probably having a 4-star experience through most of my reading of the book, but the ending definitely elevated it up to a favorite of the year. So that is definitely going up in faves, and I think I would put that one above Rebecca. Then we have A Mouthful of Dust by Nhi Vo. This is the most recent installment in the novella series that starts with The Empress of Salt and Fortune. The series itself is called The Singing Hills Cycle, and these stories follow our non-binary cleric named Chi, who has a talking bird companion, and their job is basically as a historian to go around and collect people's stories and save them in perpetuity at the Singing Hills Abbey. They come across lots of interesting characters. Sometimes there's danger, and this one was a good entry in the series. It definitely wasn't one of my favorites, but I had a good time. In this one, they are entering a village that has experienced a famine, and they are trying to find out the real story of what happened during the famine and why the townsfolk are so secretive about the true nature of it. I would say every book in the series qualifies under fun. I think this one is a little bit more on the forgettable side in terms of the ones that I think of when I think of this series, but I'll still put it in fun because I always have a good time when I'm reading these. The Serviceberry by Robin Wall Kimmerer is up next. This is the only nonfiction book that I read this fall, and this is a really short nonfiction that I listened to as an audiobook. I think the audiobook was only 2 hours, so in reality it's like a glorified essay, but this is by the same author as Braiding Sweetgrass, and I read this in my Goodreads reading vlog this year, which was really fun. I absolutely loved this. Robin Wall Kimmerer has an amazing way of talking about nature and humans' connection to it and how we could be doing better, and it has actionable items that I always really appreciate. So I definitely think This one belongs in favorites. I won't necessarily have it in my favorites of the year, but when I think about favorite nonfiction books, it will be up there. Then we have The Everlasting by Alex E. Harrow. I have loved everything that I've ever read from Alex E. Harrow, and this was absolutely no exception. I would say The Everlasting is my favorite book that I've talked about so far. And so it's definitely going at top of favorites. I hope to own this book in hardcover. But this is a story of a lady knight who is sworn to protect the kingdom, and a historian who knows of her legacy that is absolutely in love with her, and he ends up going back in time through circumstances and meeting her and falling in love with her in real life, but she is absolutely nothing like what he expected, and he is forced to make sure that she continues out her tragic journey because her sacrifice basically ends up with the creation of stability over centuries. So he ends up being very conflicted about seeing her live out this legacy when he knows that it will end in her untimely death as he's starting to get to know her as a real person, and the cycle plays out over and over and over again. And I won't spoil it, but it's just really, really good. Then we have A Memory Called Empire by Arkady Martine. This is the first book in a sci-fi duology that I really loved. I had a lot of hits. I know I'm like way topping up on the faves. Maybe I'll adjust as we get through, but yeah, I had a lot of really good reads this fall. A Memory Called Empire is the story of an ambassador to basically the empire that controls most of the known universe, and she is sent to the planet where that empire is based as the ambassador of her people, and her job is basically to try and keep the empire from putting their fingers any deeper into the honeypot of her home planet, or home station, I think. She ends up getting entangled in the going-ons of the government there. They have a really interesting technology that is unique to their people, where they implant like a chip in their head, and that allows them to know the history of the previous people who have held their positions. And so she is supposed to know everything that the former ambassador knew, but unfortunately the former ambassador never sent back updates, and so they really don't know what happened to him, and she is requested to be the ambassador because of the untimely death of the former ambassador. And so she has to figure out what sort of circumstances led to his death and what he was involved in, all the while, you know, getting tangled up in the goings-on of the government and shady dealings all around. And there's a lot of instability within the government that she wasn't expecting and that she's not also privy to. So she has to kind of do some sleuthing as a foreigner to this place. And I just thought it was very well executed, very well done, great plot. I'm very much looking forward to picking up the second book here in the next month or so. For now, I think this one will go above Rebecca, but below Will of the Many. We'll see how that plays out over time. All of these, of course, have a lot of recency bias behind them. Then we have A Mask of Mirrors by M.A. Carrick. This is the first book in a series called the Rook and Rose trilogy, and M.A. Carrick is an author duo in the same way that James S.A. Corey is an author duo, and one of the authors of that is Marie Brennan, who is the same author that wrote A Natural History of Dragons or the Memoirs of Lady Trent series, which I absolutely loved. So I had a really great time with The Mask of Mirrors. These books are really chunky, and so unfortunately I haven't quite gotten to the second book yet, but I am planning to read that this month. But The Mask of Mirrors is basically like a period piece court intrigue fantasy that I would say is somewhat like high fantasy meets The Mask of Zorro meets Bridgerton, minus the smut. But it's really good, it's really fun, and it is the story of Rin, who is a con artist, and she is trying to sneak her way into a noble family in order to get access to their riches. She grew up as a street urchin, and as she's doing so, she finds out that the family that she is infiltrating into is basically broke and has no money to give her. But she gets very involved in all of the court intrigue and politicking that is going around amongst the nobles, as well as learning more about this mysterious Rook figure who is exactly like Zorro. He is a man that like steals from the rich to give to the underbelly, the the suppressed peoples of the society who are actually the native citizens of this land. And the land is very much, the city is based on sort of like a Venetian vibe where there's lots of canals and bridges. I just absolutely love the vibes of this book and had a really, really fun time. It's going at top of fun for sure, and very much looking forward to the next. Then we have the 2 books of the Dungeon Crawler Carl series that I read over the fall, which was books 3 and 4. The 3rd one was actually Carl's Doomsday Scenario, and the 4th one was the Dungeon Anarchist Cookbook. I love Dungeon Crawler Carl. I've had such a great time with all 4 of these books so far, and so they are going definitely in fun. But I also liked the 3rd book more than I liked the 4th book, so I'll put that one at the bottom. Then we have The Vanished Birds by Simon Jimenez. This was actually a book that I read for my family's book club this year. This was my mom's pick, and it is absolutely one of my favorite books of the year. It is going at the top of faves. I sobbed when this book ended. There are so many tragic things that happen. There are so many good characters. There are so many hateable characters and morally gray figures. But this is the story of a young boy that grows up on a spaceship. He's believed to have some special abilities, and a crew of a spaceship is hired to basically take care of him until he is of age where they can actually see if he has this magical ability or not. And it's about the story of the captain of that ship who ends up falling in love with the boy in like a mother-son sort of relationship, and what she tries to do to protect him. And also it follows the perspectives of lots of different characters over the course of this boy's coming of age, and how she got to be the ship captain and the choices that she had to make with her crew, and it follows the corporation that hired her to do this and all sorts of different things, and the planet that he was originally found on. I just really thought that this was all woven together so well. There were so many horrific moments of this book. There were so many heartwarming moments of this book. And like I said, it just absolutely wrenched my guts. And I will definitely be thinking about this book for a long time to come. Then we have All That We See or Seem by Ken Liu, and unfortunately this one is a flop for me. I didn't have a very good time reading it. I want to just put it in forgettable because I like Ken Liu. I loved the Dandelion Dynasty. I read all 4 of those Chonky books in a single month last year. So it really broke my heart that this book did not work for me. But I was pretty bored most of the time that I was reading it. It was a sci-fi thriller. I felt no thrills. I wasn't intrigued really by the premise at all. And honestly, it hasn't been that long since I read it, and I don't remember that much about it. What is the plot of this book? The main character's name is Julia, which I mostly remember because that is also the name of the series. I will not be picking up any more books in the series. This one just came out, but there, I expect, will be more books, obviously. But this Julia person is basically like a really good hacker, and she is investigating the death of this woman who was really good at creating like dreamscapes in a sort of like virtual reality sort of way, but that connected people. It's hard to get into because I don't remember it that well, not because it wasn't an interesting concept. I did think there were interesting concepts in here, but the book itself, I was just bored. So yeah, really disappointed, but gonna put it in a flop. I only gave it 3 stars. It wasn't horrible. It's just not a book I would recommend because I didn't like it. So wah wah. Okay, The Strength of the Few is next, and that is the second book following The Will of the Many by James Islington. I also just read that for the Goodreads reading vlog. I also had a really good time reading it. Love James Islington's plots. I do think that our main character Viz is too much of a Gary Sue and is only really as interesting as the characters that are surrounding him. I don't think our main character actually has that much depth, and so some of the storylines in this one are more or less interesting based on who Viz is surrounded by at the moment in those storylines. But I do think it was really, really well done, and I had a good time, and I absolutely would pick up book number 3 if it was out already, and I would be picking it up right now because it ended not on as big of a cliffhanger, but still on a cliffhanger. So I think I will probably put this one in between my 2 Dungeon Crawler Carls. It was very fun. It was not one of my favorites. The Fireborn Blade by Charlotte Bond. This is a novella, and I believe it is also the first book in a duology. I have not picked up the second one yet, but I loved this. It was so much fun. Once again, one of the ones that I read for the Lady Knights vlog, but this is the story of a knight who is going to try and steal this famous sword from a famed white dragon that has it in its lair as a way to regain her honor because she has recently been shamed and lost her position of respect with the king. She has a squire with her that is helping her, but things are not what they seem, and there was a really intriguing plot twist about 75% of the way through this novella that kind of turned it into a revenge plot for the last 25%, and I was just having a grand old time. I think this book is very underrated, and I would highly recommend more people pick it up. I'm going to put this one, I think, also above Strength of the Few. It was quick, it was snappy, it was a great time. The Isle in the Silver Sea was the last one for my Lady Knights reading vlog, and that is by Tasha Suri, the same author of the Jasmine Throne Burning Kingdoms trilogy, which I really, really loved. This book was fantastic. I think I gave it 4 stars. I really didn't have that many bad books over the fall. I had a really good fall. Wow. Yeah, putting it all here in the tier ranking is making me appreciate it even more. But yeah, Isle in the Silver Sea, it was great. It's the story of the knight and the witch. Their fates are tied by the story of the land and the history of the knight and the witch, and they're forced to basically relive this story throughout time as they're basically reincarnated in different bodies, and how they are trying to break that cycle because their love story is a tragedy. It had a lot to say about anti-colonialism and what it means to be brown in a very white place and the meaning of love, and there's lots of found family. It was great. It was beautiful. Loved it. So it's going in fun. Where do I want to put it in fun? Maybe towards the bottom of fun, but like these are all hits. So yeah, hard to decide. Memory of the Ogiesi is the 3rd and final book of the Forever Desert novella trilogy, and I had high hopes for this one. I think I've given the other 2 books 4 stars in this series. This one was forgettable, unfortunately. I was really expecting it to be kind of the epic conclusion, but I just wasn't that interested as I was reading it. So yeah, it was just meh. Catabasis by R.F. Kuang is another one that I absolutely loved. I feel a bit out on a limb here compared to most people that I've seen reviewing this book who just thought it was okay or didn't love it. I loved it. I loved it from the very first pages. I was sucked in. I really related to the main character's like academic struggles and the sexism that she had to deal with and the lengths that she was willing to go to recover her academic honor, so-called. Is obviously like very exaggerated to my experience, but I thought the sentiment there was the same. And I also thought that the story between her and her academic rival, who is a former very good friend that she kind of had a falling out with, and then they rekindle a bit of a flame as they're crawling through the 7 layers of hell together. I thought it was very sweet and very well done, and honestly, R.F. Kuang doesn't have any misses for me. I have now read all 6 of her books. I would rank this one above Babel and Yellowface for my personal taste. I know it's an unpopular opinion, but it was a banger. And I would put this above The Will of the Many, but below The Everlasting. So hot take. Hot take, y'all. And then the last one here is The Haunting of Hill House, which I read in the month of October, and this was in my Gothic Classics reading vlog as well. The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson, I understand why it's a classic. It's set in the 1950s, I believe, and so I found the main character really interesting because she's a very like strong, independent woman sort of character in a time when most women weren't afforded those sorts of freedoms. So I really liked her perspective, and I actually loved the first half of this book. But then her mind starts to deteriorate because of what is happening at the house, and it was unclear to me at what point we shifted from like an interesting narrator to like a crazy person. And the narrative just got a lot more muddled, and I know that was very intentional and I appreciated it, but I just didn't have as much fun in the second half, and I wish there had honestly been a bit more oomph, I guess, in the second half. But I did really appreciate what this book did, and I had a good time. Unfortunately, I had already forgotten that I read this book, so it is going, I think it would fit at the bottom of fun or at the top of forgettable is kind of what I'm thinking, because I had fun with the first half of the book and then I was kind of meh about the second half. So I'll leave it in forgettable for now, just because that looks a little bit more balanced to me. But yeah, obviously I had a great reading fall. I hope that you did too. So if you've read any of these books, please let me know down in the comments below what your favorites were or what you thought about some of these books, if you absolutely disagree with everything I'm saying, or if any of this resonated with you. And if you haven't read any of these books, I would just love to know what were your faves over September, October, and November this year. Thanks so much for tuning in and hanging out for a little bit today. Coming up soon, I will be having my anticipated releases for 2026. So look forward to that coming up pretty soon here in December, and I'll see you again next time.